When you are really blissed out and ecstatic, do you ask to be or not to be? In some way you're frustrated, some way you're burdened, so you're asking to be or not to be. Leave that aside, that's the thing. First of all, today in the world, people who claim to be liberals are actually fanatics. If you do not agree with them, they'll finish you in some way. So, about Jhansi Rani saving the cow well, she is a woman who stands out in our history and you're just fortunate that you…
But she did save a cow. I'm like, listen guys, rather than fighting, why don't you access the facts? They're like, she did save a cow, but we should not show it as a cow.
See, the thing is, we don't know who wrote the story. She didn't save one cow. Cows would have always been saved because in this country, which is a pastoral country, cow and cattle was the wealth of this nation. If you look back at Mahabharata, they're not talking about land as wealth, they're always talking about cattle as wealth, because land was there plenty. Cattle, how many thousand head of cattle did you own, decided how rich you are. So if somebody stole a cow, they caught you and beat you up, all right?
Yeah, that's how it is in back home as well. Like I come from a village and sometimes the only thing that
I'm
they have
saying
is
this whole lynching debate that's going on in the country, these people who are talking about it have not seen India. They've not seen India at all. They're just living in cities and television studios and endlessly talking about these things. Let me say this clearly, I have always been connected with rural life. In my life, I have witnessed 3 lynchings, okay, I witnessed. In 2, they were killed, in the other one, nearly killed. For what? One was because they believed this man could be stealing their children. People lynch, even recently it happened. If you steal their children, if you steal their cows, if you cut a tree and take it from his farm, these are 3 things for lynchings will happen. I have seen all 3 varieties. I tried to get into it and stop this. They said, you don't get into it, and pushed me aside. I knew the local sub-inspector who was a senior in my college. So I went to him and said, you need to do something. These guys just killed the guy and buried him right there in the village. The entire village knows and nothing. He said, you don't get into this. I said, why? He said, see, this is how it is. They have their own law. I am a police officer, I enforce a certain aspect of the law. Rest of the law is handled by them in their own terms. So actually, this is a crowd, because there is no actual total law enforcement in the country. Slowly it is coming, but it has not been there for a long time. People manage their own things.
But Sadhguru, there's a lot of other atrocities, like for example…
No, there are. But let me finish this, because this is a big issue in the country today. So I'm not trying to prove this is the way to do it. All I'm saying is, when mob tries to enforce justice, their idea of justice, this is how it gets enforced. Unfortunately, that's where we are. We need to understand that's where we are. If we want to change this, there are many things we need to do, not going on pointing about somebody saved a cow. Well, when people thought they're child lifters and they killed them, why did you start a debate about that? Because if you start a debate about don't save your children, then you will get it back, all right? Cow is an easy thing right now to go at. So this is not about cows, this is not about… whatever is precious to them. If they believe somebody is taking it, they can't call the police, because if they call the police, they'll come after 24 hours. And if they come, there are so many issues. It doesn't directly get settled. So people have their own way of settling. Unfortunately, it is going into a place where people are being killed on the street. It should not go there, means law enforcement needs to come on all levels of life. Law enforcement has not reached the entire geography of this nation. Let's get to that. We need to do that.
Sadhguru, I am a Rajput myself, and when the whole Padmavat episode took place and, cutting one of my contemporaries' nose, I was embarrassed. And also when the rape took place in Kashmir, to be pointing out things like…
This wouldn't disturb anybody if it was Hollywood. Because a lot of them have cut their noses off and replaced.
But So criminals are not
Yes, I know.
religions. Criminals cannot be associated with religion. That is just simply trying to
I don't think that was about
instigate.
religion at all. Anyway, that whole movement was not against religion, there are many political aspects to it. When this was happening in full flare, the Padmavat issue, and Prasun is here, so when they were burning buses, then I called somebody, a very responsible person in the country, and said, "What is this? How are we allowing this to happen? If you don't like a movie, don't go. I don't go to the movies." So, if you don't like it, you don't go. Why do you have to burn a bus that people have to use tomorrow morning? They said, "Sadhguru, they have all dressed up 100 women like brides and they're sitting ready to burn by themselves, volunteers to burn. Today, if we handle them rough on the street, tomorrow if these 100 women, even if 10 of them burn themselves, it'll become an international issue. So let the buses burn for 1 or 2 days, then we will deal with it." I thought this is a strange kind of wisdom, but it is wisdom.
Okay.
So we need to understand this, instead of giving commentaries because somebody went to Western universities and came back giving that kind of commentary in this country without understanding the realities. No. There are unfortunate realities of various kinds of divisions that people are trying to play up. When they don't get any voice to say something, they will gather one caste together, they will gather one community together or gather one group of language people together or religion together and do something on the street to get attention. The unfortunate way that this become a culture to get attention is burn the bus. People, tomorrow morning they'll have to walk to their place of work, but burn the bus and get attention. In every other country, if they want to protest, they burn old tires. I think our people don't know how to take the tires out, so they're burning the entire bus. It's a mechanical lapse.
Okay, Sadhguru, Indians are doing so well, whether it's the CEOs of Google, Microsoft, MasterCard, Nokia, the list goes on. All the chief executive, I have a whole list of
No,
those.
Pepsi is out, okay.
Yeah, so Indians are doing so well all over the world, but India is not doing well. Why is that?
Everybody in the world thinks India is doing very well, but here there is a commentary that India is not doing well. When I look at you, I see you're doing well. When I look at these people, I see they're doing well. But yes, it is a fact, 40% of our population is still malnourished, unfortunately. This is because our focus in these last 70 years has largely been to industrialize, build cities and stuff. We have not focused sufficiently on our agriculture, enhancing rural life. Right now, we are pitching very hard to do this, and I think in many ways, the governments of today, particularly the central government, is very focused on seeing this happen. Well, it's not as easy as said, there are many challenges, but a clear plan at least is being evolved, how to make agriculture lucrative, how to make rural living in a village worthwhile, that even if you want to see a cinema, you don't have to go to the city, that living in a village should be worthwhile. So these things are being planned. In some states it's going very fast, in some states it's going slow, but right now the focus is how to make it worthwhile living in a village, that you don't have to… If you want to have a good life, you have to go to the city. This is how it's been in the last 50, 60 years. This, the government is trying to change. All of us should support this movement towards developing villages. If we need to forego a few things in the cities for some time, we should, and allow the villages to develop. Otherwise, you'll have all of them coming to the city. That's the biggest problem in Mumbai. People are just coming in without any infrastructure, they don't know where to be. In most inhuman ways, unfortunately, they're existing because they just come in without any basis. And the life that they go through, the exploitations that they go through, what happens to them is an untold story.
But Sadhguru, don't you think population explosion, like China was also facing a similar problem a few years ago and they have tackled it so well, and with us…
Don't say well, they've handled it. Because you should know in China,
No, I don't know.
they were burying live children. Second child born, live children were just being buried in the hospitals. When that video was taken and it went viral around the world, they changed that to giving iodine injections to the brains of healthy children, second child. So you don't have the stomach nor the heart to do anything like that, so don't compare to China. But do we have to control our population? Absolutely.
So at least there should be tax on the third child?
What is that?
At least there should be tax on the third child, because they're using roads and river water which you're trying to save, and the oxygen from the trees which I am planting with many other people. So at least two children should be okay, but third one should have tax.
Don't say that because I'm the fourth among the siblings. I have a big tax sitting on my head. Definitely some incentives have to be done. Right now, when I spoke about this a year ago, there was a lot of controversy in the south. We've been trying to bring this in the villages. A voluntary year of no conception. All we need to do is, see, because our life expectancy has improved, it's not because an explosion of reproduction has happened. No, that's not true. It is our life expectancy is improving. That means we took our death into our hands, but we are not taking the birth into our hands. We have… See, just about 50 years ago, an average time when the first child happened to a young woman in this country was somewhere around 16 or 17 years of age. It's moved to about 24 right now, but we need to push this to 35.
Sadhguru, these days, the common discussion which is going on is again about the refugees. And we being celebrities, we get these questions asked, and this is the most conflicting question ever, because as a nation, being a part of this country and knowing that so many of us don't even have access to food, education, electricity, absorbing more people into our population clearly isn't a good idea, but denying those people seems even worse. So what should be… again, where does spirituality comes here? What part does it play? And what happens to inclusiveness when such a thing happens?
You're picking on my yoga definition.
No! No, I clearly know that this is the worst thing to do right now, because they are coming in millions and millions and millions, where our own are starving. So it's like saying that I let my own child die, but I save the neighbor's one. So, what sort of negotiation is that?
If that was the intent, I would bow down to such people. I will let my own child, but I'll save your child. I will bow down to such people if they exist. But that's not the thing. We are trying to project our inefficiency as compassion. I don't like that. We don't know how to man our borders, but we are talking about compassion. That's not the truth. We're just projecting our inefficiency as some kind of a great value. There's no value to that. So, talking about influx of people from outside, see, when somebody comes to the nation's door because they are violently persecuted somewhere, we should treat it differently. After all, they are human beings. But for economic well-being, people are daily porous borders, people are going across here and there. We need to do something about it. If we don't do anything about it, we will be stupid, because you cannot run a nation without knowing how many people and who is in this country. We cannot run a country like that. First of all, we must understand, I am not for nationhood if you ask me. It would be fantastic if we live as one world, but we are nowhere near that possibility, okay? We are nowhere near that possibility. Right now, the best way to address humanity, and the largest segment of humanity that you can address right now, is a nation. So nationhood is right now very important and a practical solution for humanity as a whole. In the making of a nation, one of the most basic ingredients is the sovereignty or the physical, geographical peace that we call a nation. In this, there may be culture, there may be language, there may be religion, there may be everything else, economics, everything is secondary. First and foremost thing is, there is a piece of geography which we call as a nation. Now, if you're talking about inclusion, you're right now talking about India, Bangladesh, well, you know, we became two nations or three nations. We became two nations in 1947, we became three nations in 71, So some people think we can make ourselves into another 4 or 5 or 6. No, I think we must stop this nonsense now, because people who are talking this do not know the suffering that happened in 1947-48. There are still… I'm sure in this hall there are many people whose parents walked across the border and came at one time. What they have gone through, what they have left behind, the sufferings and the pain, and the nearly 600,000 people who died, and about 2 to 3 million people who migrated from this side and that side. In both sides of the border, after 70 years, second generation of people still are not settled. Many of them are still living like refugees. When this has happened, talking about one more partition is a stupid and the dumbest thing to do. We should not talk about that. Now about the porous borders between India and Bangladesh, well, we have largely sealed India and Pakistan, isn't it? Why? Because they're coming across with guns. Here they're just coming for livelihood. So if they come, we can always… if people come to work, we can give them work permits. They can work here and go back when they want to, as people from Bengal are coming to South India, working for 2-3 months and going back. Similarly, they can also come and go, you can have some kind of a loose structure. But if you just allow people and give them ration cards and identity cards simply without any accounting, this is going to be a disaster. This will lead to all kinds of problems in future. You cannot run a nation without knowing who is in this country. If somebody wants to come into this nation, they must come through the front door, they must ask for immigration and come through the front door. We must have a system for that. We must have a system for that. How can people knock on the country's door and come inside? Not slip in from wherever they want and be wherever they want. That's not going to work. For nobody it's going to work. We have to take steps on that.
It can work for a few politicians.
Unfortunately, nation's interests are being sacrificed for personal ambitions. That is there in this country, what to do?
But it still is a very conflicting thing, because…
See, if you want to be really inclusive, we can make the two countries into one. Yes. We can make Bangladesh into a union territory and make it a part of this country, then everybody can go across, like you come from Pondicherry or anywhere else, like that you can go where you want. Are you ready for that? If you're ready for that, I think India is ready for that. If you talk about inclusiveness, that's a way to include, isn't it? Not slipping into my house from the back door and saying, include me, it's not going to work.
Okay, now we'll move to your favorite topic.
What is that? I didn't know you figured out all those things.
Okay, now we move to Shiva.
Oh.
So Shiva is what I got from reading about it and doing my practices and spending time with you. Shiva is not somebody sitting up there and looking at all of us. Shiva is a dimension. It is what they say in science, a black hole where nothingness seems to be the origin of universe, where everything seems to be coming out of nothingness and being swallowed into nothingness. That very nothingness is Shiva. So anybody who accesses that dimension, if you access that, you become Shiva. If I tap into that, I can become Shiva. But okay, tell me that so Adi Yogi, the very first yogi, was somebody who has access to that dimension. So why is it that you are obsessed with Adi Yogi? Isn't it like making it about the container and not the contained? Sadhguru, isn't it like that? Like you only talk about Adi Yogi. It's like Adi Yogi is the container.
Till now, I have not said a word about him. You brought him.
No, but you've made the sculpture of Adi Yogi and you…
Yeah, it's only 1.5 years old, but you're not checking what I was doing these 36 years. Let's come to that, that's fine. See, about Adi Yogi is not an obsession, or the Adi Yogi is a plan. I should not… Mumbai is not…
No, reveal it.
Mumbai is not the best place to reveal it, but now that you asked…
So judgmental.
Let's go. That's her next movie, she's promoting it. Everybody must watch this Mental and Manikarnika, everything, okay? I'm promoting it so that… So, you talked about nothing. We must understand this nothing. English language has certain limitations on these aspects, but we can… because we are speaking that language, we can manipulate it a little bit. If you want to understand nothing, you must put a hyphen between no and thing. It's not a thing. That doesn't mean it does not exist. This would have been a ridiculous statement for the Western minds. I'm saying Western minds because all of us are Western educated. Maybe we're living in India, we've born in India, grown up in India, but we are all Western educated. For a Western mind, this would be a ridiculous idea. Of a couple of decades or maybe 3 decades ago, it would have been so. But now, science is talking about no things. That means non-physical dimension of existence, something that is not a thing, but still a powerful force. When I say something that's not a thing, we are not talking about nuclear energy, we are not talking about, electrical energy or amagnetism or anything. Simply nothingness is tremendously powerful. Today they're calling it, black existence or dark power, or many things are being used. So essentially, you're talking about a dimension which is a source of something. Now this is something, everything here is something. But this has come from all that we call as nothing because it's not a physical form. A physical form, in essence, means a certain defined boundary. You call this a physical body because this is a defined boundary. If there is no defined boundary, this cannot be physical. So when we said yoga, this union that you're… inclusiveness you're poking at me is essentially that you transcended your physical nature, so you are not a something anymore. Once you're not a something, there is no defined boundary for you. Once there is no defined boundary for you, union is the only way you can exist, there is no other way to exist. This is not just a concept, this is a living experience, this is the reality of the cosmos. That if you look up in the sky, even a little child looks up in the sky, you will count stars. Maybe there are millions and billions of stars out there, but still, all the stars put together, they do not occupy even 1% of the space out there, isn't it? But nobody pays attention to that space, that is nothing. So this 99% or more, 99.9% is vast nothingness in this few specks of something. But your attention is only there simply because your visual apparatus are made like that. You're not able to grasp what is not there. You only see whatever stops light, in the sense, you're able to see this hand simply because it's stopping light and reflecting. So your ability to see is always limited to whatever stops light. See, right now we are sitting here, our microphone, our light, everything is important, but the most important thing is the air that we are breathing for our existence right now. But we cannot see it. Does it mean to say we can do without it? So that which you cannot see, that which you cannot touch, that which you cannot perceive through 5 sense organs, that is called a no-thing or a nothing. That's called Shiva. Shiva means that which is not. Now, if somebody begins to experience that as a living experience, we refer to him also as Shiva. But somebody who's not experienced it, we refer to him also. Half the people in this country at one time were named after Shiva. That is all the men, I'm saying. Ladies were Shiva, Shivangi, Shiva this, Shiva that, or Parvati, Gauri, this one, that one. Why this was so is constant reminder that you need to look beyond what is there in front of you. This physical form of being a man or a woman or this person I like, this person I don't like, beyond this, when I call him Shiva, now I cannot say I like him or dislike him. When your name is Shiva, you claimed already you're Shiva, when your name is Shiva, when I call you Shiva, I cannot call Shiva angrily, I cannot do something. It's a kind of a control over yourself, that you cannot abuse somebody. You cannot say, hey Shiva, you're this and that. You can only say Shiva. So we created a culture like this where constant reminder, wherever you look. We even called our dog Shiva. Yes, we never thought it's an insult because he's as much alive as you are. We called… if you see a tree, we say Shiva, if we see a rock, we say Shiva, if we see a bird, we say Shiva, simply because the source of all that exists here as physical stuff essentially comes from that which is not a thing or no thing or Shiva. So, this is why this talk about third eye and people think their forehead is going to crack and something is going to pop out, nothing like that. These two eyes can show you only that which stops light. The day you start seeing things which do not stop light, then we say, you have one more eye going. You have an inner eye which is able to see something that these two eyes cannot see. So third eye does not mean forehead cracking up and you becoming some kind of a freako. That means your clarity has opened up, that you're able to see beyond the limitations of senses.
So all the enlightened people who've been…
How many did you meet?
Like I've heard about many, like say Krishna or Muhammad or Ram or Christ, Buddha, all the enlightened people who've been on this planet, there is some sort of mention of their birth or death. But when it comes to Shiva, like you say, and I've read that he was self-created, and I often ask you this question, that did he like disappear into thin air, and apparently something like that happened. He couldn't even have biological children with any of the women he was married to. Also, he
At least you can't blame him for the population.
Sadhguru, I'm coming to something very important. There is a theory…
I thought population was very important
No.
too.
There is a theory that Shiva is alien.
Say, till now you've been talking about inclusiveness and suddenly you call somebody an alien.
No, Sadhguru, there is a theory…
I must tell you this, every time I enter United States, at the immigration, I end up standing in that line which says, resident alien. I look around and see I'm the only one who fits the description.
Sadhguru, let me finish this question. So there is this theory that…
She won't let you go.
No, that everything that humans encounter, whether it's an idea, it's a thought, it's anything that they encounter, it's been transmitted into them through an outer space, an outer being. My favorite director, Christopher Nolan, made this film, Interstellar, which is one of my favorite films, where they are constantly referring to certain beings as they. They are communicating, they are talking to us, they are doing this, but they never really clarified who they were. Like, were they aliens, were they gods, who they were? And Sadhguru, like this, I think I felt it in, like when any creative idea comes to me, it has absolutely no intellectual grounds where I can go back and track it down. It's literally like a mail dropped in my head. It seems like it's from an outside space.
This is not a confession.
I know it's a confession, but Sadhguru, is it that we are being operated by an external, sort of outside beings? Is it that?
Well, people who have no faith in human intelligence are looking up that intelligence will come from somewhere else. What we need to understand is, see, there are certain things which are very significant things in this country which unfortunately this present generation has completely forgotten or very few people are reminded, and the rest of the world, some places they recognize, rest of the places it's not there. What the thing is just this, here we consider things like this. For example, in yoga, we call your spine the center of the universe, we call it Merudanda. That means it's the axis of the universe. What is a universe? Please understand this. Today scientists are admitting it is an endless universe. Forever they said, if you travel this many million light years, you will reach the end of the universe. But now they're admitting it's an endless universe. Forever we've been saying it's an ever-expanding universe. So we said, your spine is the axis of the universe. That sounds ridiculous. Even without putting any load, most people's backs are hurting badly. They can't even walk or run or do anything. If this becomes the axis of the universe, what will happen? Why we are saying this is, see, you know there is a universe or you think there is a universe only by your experience, isn't it so? If you did not experience, if you could not see this, if you could not see like this and feel like this, you wouldn't know there is a universe. Only because of your experience there is a universe. And the center where your experience is being transmitted is through your spine. If you cut a few wires in your spine, you will have no experience even of the body, forget about the universe. So because your ability to experience the universe is rooted and centered in your spine, we are calling your spine as the axis of the universe. Suppose this hall, see now we know the boundaries of this hall. Now we can debate whether this is the center of this hall or that is the center of this hall. Suppose there are no boundaries to this hall. How would you decide which is the center of this hall? Where you are is the center of the hall, isn't it? From this basis, we developed a whole possibility for a human being, how not just to believe these things, but to make it into your living experience. It is from this the word yoga came, that the inclusiveness happens not because I tell you, oh, I love you, you love me and all this stuff. Inclusiveness happens simply because you obliterate the boundaries of your individuality. Not because I love you, you love me, I hug you, you hug me, so because we are inclusive, no. All that will last for some time. Tomorrow if they do something that you don't like, it'll be finished. But you obliterate the boundaries of your individual nature, including your body, that you know how to sit here without being identified with the boundaries of who you are. Your physical structure, your mental structure, your emotional structure has a boundary. It may be large or small. No, I'm not talking about the body being large. It may be large or small, but it has a boundary. But there are dimensions which have no boundary. What doesn't have a boundary is non-physical in nature. So our focus has always been on that dimension, which is non-physical. That is why Shiva became the most important thing, because Shiva means that which is not, that which is non-physical. Now is he the yogi that we're talking about, is he a human being? Did he come from somewhere else? There are many things this audience need to be primed for this, because it's a long story you're asking. I'm trying to encapsulate it in 2 minutes, that's dangerous because it'll look silly. There is a book, Arundhati is here, we spoke together and she kind of put it together. And there's a book on Adiyogi, which is going into these aspects, but let me put it across. See, there are things, as you said, there is no parentage. When you talk about Shiva, there is no parentage, there's no place of birth, nobody saw him as a young boy to grow up. All the time when we saw him, he was about the same age. And we don't know where he died, such a significant human being. Even in those times, if he died somewhere, they should have built a temple, they should have built some kind of a monument for him. Nothing like that happened. So there is no birth, there is no death, there is no parentage, there is no siblings, there is no anything to prove that he was here. Does it mean to say we can assume he came from somewhere? Not necessarily. But in many of if you look at the lore, it's very common to refer to Shiva as Yaksha Swarupa. This means, Yakshas means always those kind of beings which are not human, but who supposed to have existed in the natural environment in this planet, in the forests and other things. Whatever we were referring to, some kind of beings or creatures or whatever you want to call them, who are not human in nature. So many times in the lore, you will see any number of songs and other things talking about Shiva as a Yaksha Swarupa. So there are many things which point, but there is no specific proof that he came from elsewhere. One thing is the level of intelligence in terms of his mathematics, his music and his geometry, what he thought in terms of that. When you look at it, The times that we are referring to, see, in the yogic culture, let me admit this in front of this crowd because, oh my God, there are cameras.